The walls of the death chamber seemed to lean inward, the air thick with the finality of a life measured down to seconds. Somewhere beyond the reinforced doors, a clock ticked with cruel precision, each beat reminding everyone present that time had decided his fate. His hands were calm, almost unnervingly so, resting on the cold surface beside him. What unsettled the guards was not fear or anger in his eyes, but a quiet sadness mixed with one final, fragile hope. In those last minutes when prayers usually broke men apart, he asked for something no one expected. He asked to see his dog. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and the idea that love can survive even in the darkest places, take a moment right now to like this video, comment your thoughts, share it with someone who believes in humanity, and subscribe to the channel. Your support helps these stories reach hearts that need them most. He had been on death row for 7 years, long enough for the world outside to forget his name, and long enough for hope to learn how to whisper instead of shout. His crime was written in thick files and repeated in headlines, but the man himself had slowly faded into a number stitched on a uniform. Every appeal had failed. Every letter he wrote to prove remorse and transformation returned with silence. In the narrow cell where daylight arrived only in measured slivers, he had learned the weight of regret, not as a sudden pain, but as a constant presence, like a shadow that never left. Yet among all the losses prison had taken from him, there was one thing he held on to with desperate tenderness, the memory of his dog. Before the night that changed everything, his life had been painfully ordinary. He had grown up rough around the edges, raised in a neighborhood where anger was learned early and forgiveness came late. His dog entered his life during one of its lowest chapters, a scruffy rescue with tired eyes and a tail that wagged even when the world offered nothing. That dog became the only living being that met him without judgment. When he failed, the dog stayed. When he shouted at the world, the dog listened. On nights when he felt like disappearing, the warmth of that animal beside him reminded him that something still needed him. The crime that led him to death row happened in a moment of rage and fear, the kind of moment that ruins generations. He never denied his guilt. In fact, acceptance came quicker than forgiveness ever could. What followed was a long journey through courtrooms, isolation, and the slow erosion of identity. The dog was taken away the night he was arrested, handed to a shelter when no family stepped forward. For years he carried the unbearable uncertainty of not knowing whether that one loyal soul had survived without him. Prison life stripped him down to essentials. Days blended together, measured by meals and head counts, by the echo of footsteps in corridors that smelled of disinfectant and despair. Over time, something in him softened. He read books he once mocked, volunteered in small prison programs, and wrote letters to victims' families that he never expected to be answered. He spoke to no one about redemption, yet lived quietly, as if trying to earn it in ways that mattered only to his conscience. Still, every night, he pictured a dog with graying fur, sitting patiently, waiting for a door that would never open. When the execution date was finally set, the prison shifted around him. Guards became distant. Procedures grew precise and cold. In those final weeks, he was offered a last meal, last calls, last paperwork. None of it mattered. What mattered was a single question that burned inside him. Was his dog still alive? On the morning of the execution, driven by an impulse he did not fully understand, he made his final request. He asked to see his dog one last time. The request traveled through channels not designed for mercy. Officials hesitated, citing rules and logistics, reminding each other that executions were not ceremonies of comfort. Yet something about the simplicity of the request unsettled them. It was not about delay. It was not about spectacle. It was about closure. After tense discussions and reluctant phone calls, permission was granted under strict conditions. No one told him it had been approved until moments before the end. When the door opened, the silence cracked. The dog that entered the room was older now, muzzle white, steps slower, but the recognition was instant and undeniable. Years of separation dissolved into a single, overwhelming moment. The dog moved forward with a certainty that ignored uniforms, protocols, and the gravity of the place. In that sterile chamber, something ancient and pure unfolded. The man lowered himself as much as restraints allowed, and for the first time in years, tears came freely, not from fear of death, but from the return of love he thought had been lost forever. Witnesses later struggled to explain what they felt in that moment. The room changed. The weight lifted slightly, as if compassion itself had found a crack in the system. The dog rested close, calm and trusting, as if reminding him that he was not alone, and had never truly been abandoned. For several minutes, time seemed to pause, honoring a bond that had survived cages, mistakes, and years of silence. What happened next was the part no one expected. Among the officials present was a representative from a volunteer animal rehabilitation program that partnered with the prison years earlier. Through records and photographs, it became clear that the dog had not only survived, but had become a therapy animal, helping traumatized children and veterans. The same dog that once saved a broken man had gone on to bring comfort to dozens of others. That revelation moved through the room like a quiet earthquake. The story of the man on death row was no longer just about a crime, but about the ripple effects of care and responsibility. At the same time, outside the prison walls, something else was unfolding. News of the final request spread rapidly. People who had never questioned the machinery of justice began to pause. Letters flooded in, not excusing the crime, but acknowledging transformation. Victims' advocates spoke about accountability paired with humanity. The governor's office received calls not demanding freedom, but mercy in recognition of genuine change. As the final procedures were delayed for review, the man sat with his dog beside him, unaware of the storm his simple wish had stirred. He closed his eyes, breathing in the warmth, making peace not with the world, but with himself. For the first time since his arrest, his heart felt still. Hours later, an announcement was made. The execution was stayed. Not erased, not forgotten, but paused indefinitely pending further review. In a system rarely known for reversal, compassion had forced its way into the process. The room exhaled. Guards looked away, hiding emotions they were never trained to handle. The dog remained steady, tail slow but certain, as if it had known all along that love still had work to do. In the months that followed, the case became a symbol, not of innocence, but of transformation. The man's sentence was eventually commuted to life imprisonment without parole, acknowledging both the gravity of his crime and the undeniable evidence of change. He was transferred to a different facility where he began working with animal rehabilitation programs, using his experience to help train dogs for therapy and service. Each day, he gave back in the only way he could, guided by the same loyalty that once saved him. The dog lived out its remaining years visiting hospitals, shelters, and schools, a quiet hero with no idea of the life it had reshaped. When it eventually passed, the man mourned deeply, but without despair. He understood now that love's purpose was never permanence, but impact. This story is not about erasing wrongdoing or rewriting justice. It is about the truth that people are more than their worst moment, and that compassion does not weaken accountability. Sometimes, the smallest acts of kindness arrive at the latest possible hour, not to undo the past, but to change the future. If this story touched your heart, if it made you pause, reflect, or feel something deep inside, please take a moment now to like this video, share it with someone who needs hope, and subscribe to the channel. Your engagement helps keep stories of humanity alive. Before this story ends, we have a special request for you. Please comment the word hope if you believe that even in the darkest places, love can still change something. The clock did not win that day, love did.